All right, we are ready to go. So, good afternoon, Harald. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Harald Grosskopf accepted our invitation to our show. Guten Tag, willkommen in their show.
Hola.
Okay, thank you very much. So, with everything that is going on, Harald, with the pandemic, people dying, issues all over the world, vaccine distribution, how is affecting your life, your family, your creativity? Now you cannot do shows, all that kind of stuff.
Well, to not being able to perform live is that's really bad. On the other hand, it's isolation is what artists are used to be. This is the basic of our work. Being isolated and work undisturbed. So it doesn't bother me so much because I'm used to that. My family, well, I have kids aged almost 17, twins, and they had to go to school from time to time. Now it's a lockdown completely until mid of February. My wife is a teacher. She sometimes has to appear too. She had a test result yesterday. 2 days ago. She was with a Corona app. On her phone was alarmed that there was a contact with somebody who was infected, but everything is fine. She already had 3 or 4 tests because at school, there were kids that were infected. But we are very careful, we wear masks, and I'm not going out very much. My wife's doing all the shopping, and she's wearing mask all the time. We're keeping distance and trying to not being infected, because that's, in my age, that's very dangerous, I guess.
Yeah.
Germany was struck not so much in the beginning, but now it's very bad too, and we're all scared that this mutation coming from England will hit us, and that will be very bad for the public health system. I must say we have a very good health system, and it's just very short before its limit. And like in Portugal, it's already above limits, and that's really scary. And from my point of view, what I know is that it's still the beginning. I mean, in Germany, I don't know how much, like 500,000 people are infected, and that's just a very small amount of the population. And we need 60 to 70% people being infected to get herd immunity. The vaccine delivery is a bit slow. We have, I think, 5 categories of who will be get the injection first, and I belong to the second group, and I hope to be vaccinated in 2 months or so.
Sure.
Well, that's about the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I know. Here, United States also, now we have a new president, and then they will start to accelerate on the vaccine, giving it to more people. They began the first phase with medical doctors, nurses, and then now they will go to teachers, students, and police, and then third for for the rest of the people. So it's funny. My wife also is a teacher, and my
Oh
son is
yeah.
and my son is 17 too. And he likes music, man. He
Yeah,
likes
so
learning
you're a
music.
late father. You're
Yeah,
you're a late father too,
that's
like
right.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got married again later on in my
How
life.
old what? How old was you?
I'm 58.
You're 58. Okay, then I'm an older
Yeah,
father. I was 54 when my kids were born.
yeah. That's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing, man.
Yeah.
That's great. So let's say where you
Never was
I go ahead.
had in mind being a father.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Um, in my early A lot of work, that's right. But it's a lot of fun too, and but now it's sometimes a bit difficult.
Sure.
But it's we don't have to care so much anymore, thank God, because that was especially with twins, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. So let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family, and how old were you
Well,
when you began playing drums and the first instrument?
I think I was 15. My parents, they played mouth harp and were
Yeah.
in the choir of the Lutheran church. So this was a little bit, but they didn't like my music when I was 15. You know, Beatles and Rolling Stones. They said that is crap. Why don't they sing German? You know. Anyway, the Beatles did. You know, the first hit, "She Loves You," was they sang in German too, but that didn't help to them to like my music. You know.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I
then
was
you went,
15. Yeah.
yeah. And then you began taking drumming lesson at the time, or you learn on your own?
No, I'm an autodidact from the beginning, and my I tried it once with a drummer that became he was a follow drummer of me in my Wallenstein period, and he was a drum teacher, and I took one lesson, and it was so boring, you know, to watching to see all the notes, you know, and then I said to myself, I've done doing this since years, you know, why should I, you know, concentrate on notes? Feeling is much more important, and at the end of this lesson, you know, I told him let's you know jam, and I found out that he couldn't do it. You know, it was so boring stuff that he delivered that I didn't trust him anymore. So that was my only musical lesson ever.
And then you began doing your own. Do you remember the first vinyl record that you bought on your own?
Actually, I didn't buy very much records all my life. It's very strange. It would just happened. You know, I think one of my first records were Beatles, and not all of them. You know, most of the time I recorded on tape recorder. I had this a small tape recorder with the image of a ghetto blaster, very small reels on top, and I recorded that. And during the recording with a microphone, with a very cheap microphone, I was drumming on the table where the microphone was standing on, and so all my drumming was parallel going with that recording of the Beatles album. And a bass player from a local bass player heard that in the local open public pool, and he said, "Hey, who did that?" And I said, "Oh, it's me. I didn't expect that he liked it." He said, "Hey, that's cool. Why don't you play drums?" You know, and that was my initial, yeah, drumming idea. You know.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So let's go back now. You were part of the many 70s band, and I think the first recording you did with the Valenstein, right? Is that was your first kind of music
Yeah.
group after high school, after gymnasium, you call it gymnasium in the equivalent of
Well,
high
I
school.
didn't actually. I didn't visit a high school. We have three systems. I was in the middle system, and I had a education as a window dresser. You know, for 3 years, from 16 to 19. I was working as a window dresser. You know, this was a professional thing, and I didn't really like that job because it was like working in a huge department store, and it was physically very strengthened, and I didn't like it very much because it was boring, and it was just carrying things. And in the beginning I thought that would be a creative job, but it wasn't at all. And when it stopped in 1969, I was very happy, to leave this job.
And then that was when you became part of the Valenstein barn, or
Yeah,
that way before.
by accident, I
Really?
was I had a band, a beat band when in between 15 and 17, 18,
Yeah.
and that fell apart because we all had to go to the military, and that most of the time that really killed bands, because you just couldn't meet anymore. And when I came back from my military, I refused to do that. You had to go through a court, and so I worked I was only for 3 months at the military, and after that I had a substitute work for that in hospitals, and that was very interesting. And I was very, very close to decide becoming a doctor, because I found that very interesting. It was very bloody, and it was sometimes very existential experiences there. But I really liked it because it made sense to work in hospitals. So, and after that, I came back, and we had a little community with with two of my old band members, but it's still, we couldn't get it together. And accidentally, two guys came one day because a friend had met them in Hanover, and they had a casting date with a drummer, and the drummer didn't appear. And so he brought them to our house, and he said, "You can stay there, and there's a drummer, ask him, he's looking for a band." And so that was the start of Wallenstein. First of all, our band name was Blitzkrieg, but there was a British band with the same name, and we feared complications, so we changed the name into Wallenstein, and I recorded 4 albums until 1974.
Yeah. How many albums you guys did with Wallenstein, and what was your 3, 4?
4.
And then was any success in terms of selling records and playing different theaters and pubs?
It was not really a success. It was, I think, the success from the outside view was much bigger than a financial success. In these days, krautrock, and we belong to that period. I think it's much more popular than it was in those times. It was also very frustrating. It was really poverty and not having much money, and the band was not so much together as a team. Like I experienced it later with Klaus Schulze and Ashra. And I was fed up, and in 1974 I said, okay, I quit, and I don't want to join the band anymore, even without knowing about my future, But I just couldn't do it anymore. And in that period, I met Manuel Gottsching and Florian Fricke from Popol Vuh.
Yeah,
and. So Popol Vuh, Florian phoned me and
really?
said, yeah, and he said, I heard, because we were at the same record company, Pilz Record.
That's right.
And I like this music, very original music, and very enthusiastic. I packed my drums, and he said, come to Munich and we check it out. And so I went down there, but I was a drummer with, heavy rock drummer, and they play like this. There was in that rehearsal room was just a piano, not amplified, and Daniel had a very small amp and played, volume accordingly to that piano, and I with sticks, and I think as a drummer you need to, you play like physical. And I just couldn't do it, to that music. And so a few days later, I left very frustrated that I couldn't join Popol Vuh because I really liked it,
Very good music.
And if I would be able, in these days now, you have sticks with, with light, like jazz brushes and stuff. That would be the thing I would have, should have done these days, But that was very frustrating, yeah.
Yeah, Popol Vuh began very, very famous, and with all the different members, and then Bernard Herzog, when he was putting movies, he saw, man, I love this music, because Bernard Herzog movies, they're very, very special. So he needed a very special band, right? Everybody was at the time in the 70s and 80s, everybody was using, I don't know, Tangerine Dream for the electronic sound and all kind of stuff, but Popol Vuh was different, and it was a good mix with the Werner Herzog movies, and they did very well. And I never understood why Florian Fricke died very young, right?
Yeah, he had a infection of his heart, and that was detected very late, and it struck him down. I think he was, I don't know when that was, but that's quite time. It's quite a long time already. But it was very touching when I heard that news. Unfortunately, I never had contact after our strange meeting in 1974. But
Yeah.
I know we didn't split as enemies or anything. We still had a good friendship and a very good goodbye. That was just I wasn't able to cope with that low volume of the band. This relaxed volume. I was just too, how do you say that? Too physical.
I know. I know what you mean. It's a lot of people from that bands have some are not involved in music anymore. Danny is the only one that I think, I'm not sure he's the only one, but he's the one with a module now. And I'm trying to get a hold of him. I would love to interview him because that music is very important to me.
Yeah, his father was a popular jazz musician. Did you know
Danny's
that?
father? Danny's father?
Yeah, Daniel's father. Yeah,
I know I didn't.
and that was his background. I think he was very much into drugs in those times when I visited him, and Florian complained very many times. Oh, he's selling his Gibson guitar, and I have to get it back, and you can't rely on him and stuff like that. So, but still, he was a very very genius musician, a lot of feeling, and that's why Florian kept on him,
Yeah.
He was a good drummer too, guitar
Really?
drummer,
Yeah.
That was the problem. That's why they were looking for a drummer, because Daniel couldn't play both on stage, so Daniel wanted to play guitar, and so that's why they were looking for a drummer. I don't know whether after this incident with me, whether they had a drummer at all, until Florian passed away.
Sure. Plus, in Popol Vuh, right, there is not, like you mentioned before, Harald, it's not rock and roll drum. It's very, very soft. It requires a different talent, as if you need like a percussionist more than a drummer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think today it would be no problem to cope to that music, but in those days I was too much struck into rock music, and really heavy rock music, and I couldn't put the switch. It just happened with Ashra. I did, and that's yeah.
I understand. So feel free now to elaborate on the work with the Cosmic Jokers.
Yeah.
Feel free to elaborate on that. Your participation, what you like about that, and
I think I only like the Cosmic Joker A side, and all the other albums and B sides were not so intense and magic as the A side of Cosmic Joker. Cosmic Joker really represented what I felt during these enormous amount of sessions we did. There should be much more music on tapes from my feeling and from my remembering, and who knows where that has disappeared. If there's maybe one day somebody will dig out those tapes, but yeah, okay, the sessions were under influence of LSD a lot,
yeah.
And it was for me, it was a very existential experience, I had experience with LSD before, but that was very special because on one of those trips, I discovered that I was copying other drummers, like I was a fan of Ginger Baker, Billy Cobham, McDonald's and Giles, Michael Giles, drummer, and all these very interesting good drummers, and I was trying to copy their style. And when I was on LSD on one of those sessions, I had this voice in my head that said, Harold, why don't you just play and listen to the others instead of being Billy Cobham and then trying to impress the musicians with this secondhand copy, And then I started just drumming and listening, and that was for me. That was a very, very big change in my whole career as a drummer.
Yeah, it's like when I never done any drugs, but for the people that do LSD, it's like you have an altered state kind of stuff where.
Well, I think I don't want to say I don't want to publish that it's good to take LSD. We just did it, and
well, a lot of bands did it.
A lot of bands did it, and I think it's a very dangerous drug. I've seen a lot of musicians very close, being mentally ill from it, or maybe they were before, and it just broke out. Like Jerry Berkers, our singer in Wallenstein, he died, I think, 2006 or maybe earlier. I don't know. No, that was Hartmut Enke. He had big problems. A genius bass player, and he disappeared by this drug, and it had to do with our historical past. Our parents were Nazis, and there was this big clash between the generations, and all my teachers, there were Nazi teachers, or most of them, not the younger ones, but they had this dark education and this aggressive form of teaching, and to rebel against that, we let our hair grow and did all that stuff that was forbidden or provoked these people,
Yeah.
And the psychological traumata these parent generation brought from their experience during the war, soldiers, civilists, the bombardments on Germany, that left a lot of traumata, which probably was transported into the genes. So we were my generation is a generation full of genetical traumata. I believe in that, and then it's scientific also proven that this can happen.
Yeah, it's so sad, and that people die, and Lutz was telling me yesterday that with Nico was taking a lot of drugs, and it destroy your life. Eventually you will die.
Of course.
And people that are 40 years old, that they have 30 years in front of them to do music, and they.
Yeah, it's sad, and I think drugs are in general. If you can't get rid of it one day, it can destroy your life, of course. And we were very naive, and we did it because, like, everybody did it in those times, and we had no, we had no experience really and no idea what it can do in the future with us.
Yep.
And we did it very naive, and when we made our experiences, and they are a fact of our history. So I can't deny that I took all kinds of drugs, for a period in my life, and I'm happy that I survived it. And
totally. Yeah.
71. So.
So going back to the Cosmic Joker, the album in 73 and 74, there gotta be a way. Somebody must have recorded those sessions, right? They gotta be somewhere,
Dieter was, most of the times he was there when it was recorded, and I saw the tape recorder winding all the time. Yeah. And there must be, 40 hours of music somewhere, Yeah. And because of the clash Rolf Ulrich Kaiser and his girlfriend Gilla had with paying and stuff, I don't know where that stuff is. Maybe in those times it was not as popular, or it wasn't seen as popular as it is probably now, So and then a lot of people said, okay, it doesn't sell. Let's forget it. Which is very sad, because I think there must be music that would be worth to put it in public.
Absolutely right. It's always the musicians, right, like yourself, don't see the business side. It requires, a business savvy person within the band or within the studio where you will record, say, man, this stuff has, promise. Let's save it somewhere, put it away somewhere just in case,
It was coming. It was emotional, and I always made music, because I liked it, and I kind of sacrificed my life sometimes, and I had very very times or a lot of times where I didn't have money and didn't know how to survive the next day. On the other hand, this is a very important experience, and it made me to what I am now.
Absolutely, man. And then you went. Then after that, you did starring Rosie with Ashra Temple, right?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful album. I listened to it. How the name? Who is Rosie? I know who he is, but for people for our listeners that don't know who was Rosie.
Rosie was Rosemarie Müller was a real name. Was the girlfriend of Manuel,
Manuel, yeah.
And she was always with him when we recorded. And one day there was a microphone, and she started screaming into it, And that's why she couldn't really sing, but it was somehow, we did it, and it was okay. And then when she left Manuel in 1981 or 82, she went to New York. She's married in New York since 82, and I met her when I had a session in New York at a festival called the Unsound Festival, at a club called Le Poisson Rouge in Manhattan. It was a little festival, very very nice, and with my colleague Axel, we performed, and Rosie and her husband was there, and it was in 2013. In 2011, sorry, and that's where I met her after all that time. That was really nice. We have now contact with emails talking about the pandemic in New York and stuff, and she's a good person. Yeah,
that's great, man. Yeah. And then you did the Correlation in 1979. That's a beautiful album too. So feel free to elaborate on the album, the experience. How was it like to work with Ashra versus Ashra Temple and so forth?
I really liked Manuel's work, and he visited me in that time when I met Florian. Maybe, I don't know, a week before that, he came back with Lutz from a tour from France, and then because I wasn't living in Berlin, it was on the way in Western Germany, and so I was very surprised because I didn't have a phone then, so my doorbell rang and I opened it, and Manuel was there. Hello, and then he said, "Oh, you don't have a band now," and so we said, okay, maybe we can come together. I said, okay, you live in Berlin, let's see how it works, and no, that time it just didn't happen. On the same time, I was listening to Black Dance from Klaus Schulze in the radio.
Of course.
I didn't like very much his record Irrlicht, that was my vision of his music, I found that too intellectual, and Black Dance was full of melodies and sequence of rhythms, and I was fascinated. I heard it in the radio, and then I wrote him a letter, I guess, because I didn't have a phone. And 2 weeks later, I had an answer. Why don't you visit me? I don't live in Berlin anymore. I live in another area in Germany. Come on, visit me, and we can talk. And then that's what we did. And he said, let's go to my basement. There's my Moog, this huge thing, I had see, he had bought it from Florian, by the way, because Florian couldn't he didn't. He just couldn't handle this electron. It was not his trip. He bought it. It was very expensive in those times, and then Schulze bought it for a very good price. And so he had this thing in his basement, and he switched on the sequencer, and I had goosebumps, wow, fucking groove, and so, and then I was looking around, no drums, and I took a plastic casket, turned it around and drummed on it, bam, 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 and Schulze laughed, and I said, fantastic, let's do, next record we do together. That was Moondom,
Moondom, yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is it like to work with before we go into the Klaus Schulze area? How is it like to work with Manuel? I mean, Manuel Gottsching. He's so famous.
It was later, It was later. It was very nice too. Very different from my work with Wallenstein. Wallenstein was, we worked like crazy. Like when we rehearsed like 5 days a week, every time 5 to 7 hours, and for months, and to get a dance program together. And so that was my idea of a band, but Ashra was completely different. Manuel, like he had some lines, and Lutz, they sat on a sofa, unamplified, the electric guitar, and I had just drumsticks, and then listened to what they did, and then we started improvising, and Virgin Record. Manuel was with Virgin Record, Richard Branson. They said, nice music, but you need a producer, And we said, fucking producer, we don't need a fucking producer. We are musicians. We don't need that, But he said, okay, if you don't have a producer, you can't bring out a record on our label. So they sent us Mick Glossop, young guy. We met, nice guy, and what he did, he just sitting on the sofa in the mixing room and listened to what we did, and from time to time, there was another, Eberhard Panner, who was the guy who recorded all that. From time to time, Mick just stood up and said, "Hey, that's nice. That's a nice direction. Great. Just keep on." And then he was laid back. And in the end, he said, Eberhard, to the mixing guy or to the recording guy, and said, "Maybe let me take over now." And then he started mixing our music, and we were thrilled because he was just mixing a piece of it, like a very emotional with the faders, the bass drum, and he kind of put dynamic into it. We never experienced that before. And then you immediately felt when he had a emotional break, and then he stopped, and then he recorded, or he mixed another part of that song, and then he cut it together, and that was a correlation, and it sold very well, and that was a nice experience. And Mick Glossop is a very famous producer these days, and on Van Morrison and the whole punk scene later, and that was a very nice experience. We're still in contact from time to time. I met him in London, and that was a good thing, and it was completely the opposite of that, what we had in mind a producer will do. We saw a producer is there, oh, you don't do that, and you do that and that and that, and we don't want to hear that. That's what the idea we had of a producer, and he was completely the opposite. He kind of supported and vitalized our ideas,
And then that's it, sure. So with correlation, with the producers and Virgin Record, the correlation album did very well. You start making money at the time, or you still were very poor, or a little bit of money?
Yeah, we never made a lot of money, because we had advance money, which was quite a lot, but we had to pay the studio, and when you rent a studio for 3 weeks, and then that was in Frankfurt, we needed breakfast, we needed hotel rooms, there was not so much left. Maybe after what was left in the share, it was like living. You know, you had enough for making a living half a year or something like